Last time on Dungeons and Dragons, our adventurers find themselves in Baldur's Gate through many different ways. We have Parthenax, the Dragonborn. We have Hi-Ho Silver, the Bard. Loris, the Human Rogue. And Kalith, the Wood Elf, find themselves in Baldur's Gate. As they find them shortly after their arrival at the Baldur's Gate, or at Basilisk Gate, the adventurers are drafted by the Flaming Fist in a campaign to rid the streets of crime and seek out and destroy the Dead Three, who are responsible for some sort of murderous spree. The adventurers then travel to the Elfsong Tavern to seek questions from a spy named Tarina. In exchange for their help, she tells them where the Dead Three followers are hidden. In the Elfsong Tavern, Tarina's crew, or old crew, decided to try to jump and assassinate Tarina that night. But our merry men and woman decided to protect her for the time being. And in doing so, they killed a couple of dudes. They were all pirates, and they had received the deed to a ship called the Civil Serpent. Then, after learning out that the Tarina had told the adventurers the Dead Three followers were one of Duke Vanthenpur's sons in the dungeon before a chance encounter with Tamiat's cultists. They go to the dungeon. They go to the dungeon of the Dead Three. They find the bathhouse that old girl was talking about. They hang out at the bathhouse for a little bit. They see people coming and going, passerbys. They hang out there for about a day, and Parthenax grills some tieflings because they were acting suspicious, or at least he thought they were acting suspicious. They were just kind of hanging out. But as the night became darker, they hung out and started to stake the place out, and noticing that the guards had came by and locked the door. As they try to break in, they break in fairly successfully. They just kind of scale the walls, and they find they're being attacked by invisible imps on the outsides of the corridors. They slay the imps. They go into the bathhouse, and then they get jumped by a couple of assassins, people from the Dead Three cultists. They come out of the shadows and they try stabbing them, but they fort them as well. They find a secret passage in an office to go downstairs into the dungeon. As they travel through the dungeon, they find various things. They come down into the dungeon. The dungeon is basically some like a sewer system that is old and dilapidated from Baldur's Gate. Since Baldur's Gate is just city upon city upon city built on other cities that were burned and pillaged and then built again. They find the place is got some wooden beams holding it up, but I believe somebody knocks some of the wooden beams down and like the floor kind of collapses onto them. And they wander around downstairs for a little bit until they find 3 dead doors. The 3 different doors, each door adorning a different carving of the dead 3. The first door that they go through is the door to the east, which brings them to a moldy tapestry. They kind of leave that alone and they continue on to Baal's altar. A big 3 wooden beams braced the ceiling of the flooded chamber, which feature a stone altar covered with entrails. In the northeastern corner, hung up on the wall above the altar, is a 3-foot-tall steel mask cast in the form of a frowning human skull. I believe Parthenax walks over there gingerly and totally destroys the altar, since Parthenax is a pretty good dude. He didn't want anybody messing around with such things. They continue on into another flooded chamber. Floating face down in the middle of this flooded chamber is a couple of bloated corpses of a shirtless man with knife wounds in their backs. The corpse was once a Baal worshipper named Heskel, who was killed by his cultist peers just to, because they need sacrifices and stuff, and these guys are diabolical. After checking out the place, they go down to the southern chamber, the southern door, which is bears the carving of Morlock, which was full of necromites. Necromites are kind of human dudes. They're like shabbily. They're abyssal. They're pretty bad guys. They had skull flails. They walk into a room. Lying on the floor was, in this otherwise empty room, are pale bodies of 3 humans. In filthy black robes, appeared in a triangle formation, a lit torch between them. A rough-hewn staircase to the left leads down to another torch-lit chamber. As the men and woman walk into the chamber, the necromites quickly stand up and try to attack, but they are thrown asunder by our big, strong men and woman. They travel down the next little rough-hewn corridor to find the chamber was partially lit by has partially collapsed around a stone sarcophagus. And they open up the stone sarcophagus and they find a couple of spell books. I believe Parthenax grabs the spell books and they move on. The last chamber, the chamber to the east, the other, with a carving of Bane. They go down Bane's altar. They go down the stairs. As they go down the stairs, they get hit by javelin traps that are attached to pressure plates and tripwire that are at the bottom of the stairs. As they round the corner, they see that there is another altar, but this one is to Bane. The eastern part of the room is flooded and braced to floor to ceiling with wooden beams. Rough-hewn steps rise out of the murky water to the western portion of the room, which is dry and is lit by 2 torches ensconced that flank the stone altar. Shackled to the wall is a man, skinny and pale. He's gone white, with his loincloth, which is made out of a simple burlap sack. He also has a burlap sack over his head. And a little alcove to the north of the wall contains a freestanding suit of plate armor, which is missing a helmet. Standing before the altar are two grim figures: a powerful built woman clutching a mace, and an even bigger man wearing a bucket helm. The helmed man is jabbing the prisoner with a spear, causing him to twitch. Both figures are clad in chainmail, and a woman is carrying a wooden shield with a leering skull painted on it. The two torturers are named the female. The two armed figures are Khazar, a human female, Fist of Bane, and Yagish, a human male, Iron Consul. That's what you could call him. They're torturing this guy. So they roll up, they beat their heads in, they grab their shit. Kalith grabs the shield and begins to feel not so right. There's something wrong with the shield, but they also grab some other stuff, some keyring. The free-floating armor in the alcove contained gauntlets. These gauntlets were flying gauntlets. They had they were been enchanted, and as soon as I believe Parthenax grabs them, they quickly knock him asunder. But after a while, they like get him in a bag or something. They subdue the gauntlets. They take the man, Clem, the tortured. They grab him up, and then they take him out. Then they notice that their wounds are kind of messed up, so they bring Clem to Hi-Ho Silver's house. As Hi-Ho Silver and the other people, they go to their house. They start force feeding him food and water and trying to stabilize him, covering up his wounds and the such. As everybody kind of gets together and collects their thoughts, takes a nap at Hi-Ho Silver's house, which is just a stable, because he happens to be a, what do they call that, centaur. So they all kind of start doing their own thing. Parthenax and Kalith, they go to a magic shop. They find the magic shop where they can find and bring all magical items and have them appraised and sell. So they have a pretty good place to find and sell items for cash reasons. And Loris and Hi-Ho Silver go on a gallivanting. They try to bring Clem home, basically. They bring him to the hospital first. They try to stabilize him, but then Clem wakes up just long enough to say no hospitals, and then falls back asleep from the grievous wounds and the not very long of hanging out. So then they bring Clem. They find out somebody recognizes Clem at the hospital, and they say that he's part of the Vanthenper family. And Hi-Ho Silver saying, oh, man, he's a pretty famous guy. He's like the mayor's son or something. We should probably bring him home and get a bounty. And they bring the battered and bruised and bleeding, well, not bleeding anymore, but battered and bruised and not well-dressed man. They put him on Hi-Ho's back because he's a centaur. And they bring him to the northern part of the city, which is a lot nicer, marble street floors instead of like cobblestone and such. And they find the Vanthenpern house because it's a pretty well-known place. As they bring the Vanthempers, the Clem back to the front door, Hi-Ho Silver knocks on the door and tries to sing a song to be like, hey, we got your friend. We would like a reward. And then quickly the owner slams the door in Hi-Ho's face. And then they knock again, and a butler comes up to the door and says, oh, yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will take care of him, and suspiciously grabs him from helps him stand, and then starts walking him towards the right of the house, not into the house. But he doesn't bring Clem into the house. He starts walking him towards the shrubbery, towards the right end of the house. And as they round the corner around the house, Caliph notices that Loris notices that the butler had just killed Clem. He stabbed him in the ribs with a knife, finishing him off. Confused and confuzzled, Hi-Ho and Lorith decide to attack the butler, not exactly knowing what's happening. I believe Loris casts a spell that alerts the guards to let them know that they're coming. Be like, oh, this guy just killed a guy. The guard, summon the guards. And then they go on and they fight the butler. I believe they vanquish the butler. They managed to incapacitate and manacle the butler as the guards arrived. But everything was very suspicious, and the Vanthenpur family is very much in line with the guards. So the mayor said, arrest these men. They just attacked and killed Clem and destroyed my and knocked out my butler. So they brought they brought Caliph, Loris and Hi-Ho Silver to prison, but they put him in a truth circle, making it so they had to tell the truth in order, and then they told them everything they knew, and then they thought that was mighty suspicious. But as they are in the circle and they don't sense any magical power coming from them, so that means that they couldn't lie. So everything that they were saying, to the best of their knowledge, it was the truth. So they kind of shoot him off into the lower city and were like, look, you're not allowed to, don't come back to the upper city. The mayor is kind of after you guys. And there's really nothing that we can do about it because, it's not like the whole city watch is like, there's a lot of undercover bad guys in the city watch, and these guys just happen to be pretty cool. So you have a couple of guys that know that, there's some shady shit going on, and that they're going to be looking out for you, but also the majority of the city watch is going to be trying to kill you, or at least capture you. Probably just capture you, because you are now wanted. But Parthenax and Caliph, they were, like I said, just hanging out and going to the shop and finding out where they can sell these gloves they were trying to sell. So everybody teams up and meets up back at Hi-Ho's house, and then they decide to crawl back into the dungeon. It's getting dark, so they decide to go back in and see if they can't finish clearing the place out. The group lines up to go back down into the dungeon, and they kind of decide who's going to go first. So so Parthenax slaps Hi-Ho on the flank and decides, looks like you're up, buddy. And Hi-Ho seems pretty downtrodden with the whole events that had happened that day. They make their way back to the chamber that they found Caliph. And then Parthenax fashions himself a wooden stick to set on fire, some sort of torch, improvised weapon. Hi-Ho Silver detects a rat, and like an actual rat, and then starts following it down the corridors. And Caliph shapeshifts into a mouse and starts to scout ahead, figuring out what exactly is going on inside, deeper into the dungeon. Hi-Ho Silver finds himself a secret lever and flips it, and a big stone door falls away, and they decide to investigate further. As Hi-Ho and Kalith start, they continue to scout ahead. They find themselves in a partially dry and collapsed room containing a stone altar with humanoid skulls and bones piled around it. The top of the altar is covered with dozens of half-melted candles made of black wax. As Loris in her mouse form returns to Hi-Ho, Hi-Ho Silver quickly says that there's some spooky shit going on, so he runs back and checks on the other team, Parthenax and Lorith, as they are making the Vampire Blaster 5000, the improvised weapon spoken of earlier, which is a roughly 5-foot log, by 5 foot by 1 foot log that's sharpened to a tip, and that has handles attached to it. One of the handles is carved out of the wood, which is which is turning more into a door breacher than a Vampire Slayer 5000. It's they're starting to work on so two people can essentially hold on to this thing and ram it into things, and it has a big spike at the end. Noticing that they're entirely too busy working on the Vampire Slayer 5000, Hi-Ho returns to Kalith and begins to clear the rooms as Team A. So Team A continues to march onward and slowly clearing some of these dungeon walls and doors. They stumble upon a room that has a partially collapsed room with 3 wooden beams bracing its ceiling. Situated between the beams is a scorched wooden table with a human cadaver resting atop. A frightening thin woman in black robes studies a corpse while her face is largely hidden under a cowl. Around her feet creep a swarm of skeletal rats. As Kalith in mouse form runs back to Hi-Ho Silver and fiercely tries to communicate the spookiness that she just saw in that room, we cut back to Lorith and Parthenax, and they are still working on their thing. They're getting real close. They're almost done with their killing machine, with their big fucking door breacher. And they hear the faint voice, a faint voice coming from the north. They swiftly ignore it and continue working on the equipment. They all gang back up together, and they communicate the spooky shit that they just all saw. That the mouse lady, she communicates that there's some crazy shit going on down further into the caves. On their way back, they to the spooky room, Parthenax quick makes a stop and destroys the effigy that they found earlier with the altar with the bones all over it, with the black candles. After defiling the evil altar, clattering the black candles to the ground and stomping away the skulls, everybody stacks up at the door, the spooky door. So they run in there and start beating up the rats and beating up the witch, and you know they're everybody's toughing it out. It's a pretty hard battle. You know they're getting covered in rats. They're skeletal rats. They're punching, they're kicking, and Loris is out here, trying to pick locks or something. He contributed to the fight enough to where he can say he did contribute to the fight. But he definitely pulled back and tried to open up a box that was locked outside of the room. In the ensuing fight, everybody takes some pretty grievous wounds except for Parthenax. Parthenax has the ability to resist fire because he is a golden dragon. But everybody else that was caught at the end of the fight with the skinny witch, she threw a fireball at the ground, scorching Kalith and practically sending her soul to Avernus. In doing so, Calith finds herself in the plane of Avernus, falling for a long time. There was a whole Bill and Ted like interlude where she's going through her past and her existence and feeling her humanity slipping away from her. And as she falls onto the blackened stone crags and deathly sky of blood and cloud and storm, and she looks upon a battlefield of demons and devils shredding themselves to bits as rivers of blood coagulate around them and flowing into the river of Styx. It's a huge graphic battle, and an angel-like entity floats down from the thunder clouds, clapping above Calith, and offers her an ultimatum. She will send you back to the plane that you know of for a small price. After you have done doing your earthly deeds, you will come and fight this battle in Avernus for all eternity. And Calith, without really even hesitating, accepts the offer. They go through the other team, the conscious team. They go through. They loot the place, and they take Calith back to back to hang out at High Host place. Scratch that. They don't go back to High Host place. Calith is 100% fine. She wakes up with a breath of fresh air as all of the dust in the room turns to ash. They continue forward, and they find a room of a long hallway with a couple of rooms with sarcophaguses in them. Much of the first room has fallen in with debris, filled mostly with with a debris field, mostly burying a stone sarcophagus that was looted long ago. Nothing interesting remains in the first room. The second room, on the other hand, somebody goes into it and searches it and finds a couple of moonstones and a bag of beans. After a casual search of the sarcophagus, turns up nothing but dust and a few smattered human bones. Any character who conducts a thorough search realizes that the sarcophagus has a false bottom made with an inch-thick plaster. Smashing through the plaster layer reveals a cavity below the place where below that contains a human mummy floating in a shallow pool of red brine. The mummy has 2 moonstones embedded into the eye sockets and a bag of beans where the heart would normally be. Characters must entirely tear open the mummy's chest to find the hidden bag, which I believe Loris did. The mummy is inanimate and does not protect itself. To protest the thief. The third room has 6 moaning humans with flesh rotting and shambling about its dusty crypt, which reeks of death. An open sarcophagus rests against the back wall, its shattered lid laying in pieces around it. The The characters quickly enact and swiftly dispatch of the zombies. There was a couple zombies in there. The last door that they come into is a room. The wall and floor of this room is covered with streaks of splatters of dried blood. Two dangling bodies are shackled to the southeastern wall. One is an elderly man. The other one, a young female tiefling, both covered in bloody gashes. Neither is moving. In the middle of the room is a sturdy wooden chair with bloody whip draped over it. A bucket half filled with salt sits in the floor nearby. The group immediately is revolted with the sight of the bodies and tries to figure out what's going on. Loris attempts to pull the tiefling off the wall. Kalith, as Lorith is taking the tiefling off the wall, some of her gashes start to wrench open, and Kalith uses Cure Wounds to stabilize the gouts of blood that are pouring from the tiefling's paling body. They stabilize the tiefling girl, and she reveals her name is Vendetta. Vendetta, for the most part, is unresponsive, but keeping as close as she can with the group as they saunter farther into the dungeon. The small bit of information that she was able to give them was that she's been hearing a stone door scraping open and close from time to time, accompanied by the sound of splattering footsteps. The noise came from the north. This information might lead characters to search for things to the north. The room that they found all the tiefling in is D22. They continue farther into the cave, and they go up some stairs. They go south, and they find 3 doors. They go for the door in the south, blasting the door off the hinges with the newly acquired Vampire Slayer 3000. As they do, they find that the room has 4 flickering torch wall sconces illuminating the crypt, in the middle of which is occupied an open stone sarcophagus. The sarcophagus bears no carvings of other ornaments, but it is full of humanoid skulls and bones. 6 dusty bedrolls on the floor lay around it. Scratch that. They go north.